Turn your Bibles, if you will, to Psalms 46. Psalms 46. Psalms 46. Psalms 46. The 10th verse. Excuse me. Be still and know that I am God. I'll be exalted among the heathens. I'll be exalted in the earth. A thought today. Be still and know God. Be still and know God. The 46 Psalms was a Psalms that was written by the sons of Korah. The sons of Korah wrote several of the Psalms. And they are a part of the priest family. And the sons of Korah was a son of Levites. Levi's sons were priests. The priests came from the family of Levi. And his family, his grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren. There was a story that had to be told through their family history of some things that happened, events that happened there in the wilderness with their family. Their family rose up against Moses and Aaron. Their families basically picked a fight with Moses and Aaron. These particular individuals, great-grandfathers, challenged Moses and Aaron because they were somewhat jealous because of how God was working with Moses. You find it in the 16th chapter of Numbers. The 16th chapter of Numbers began to talk about this family that rebelled against God's authority. And in rebelling against God's authority, God began to speak through Moses. And as God spoke through Moses, God were preparing to destroy them. Sometimes we find ourselves in situations because someone else led us into it. Sometimes we find ourselves in situations because we started and developed an interest in something that God didn't have us attached to or involved in. Korah was one who challenged Moses, and then he stirred up the leadership, the people there in the camp, about 250 of them. And they challenged Moses about his leadership and his relationship with God. And they were those who were working already in the temple, burning incense. But that wasn't enough for them. I often wonder, why is it that if God has a job for the hand, why is it that the feet always want to get involved with something that only the hand can do? All right. And if God has a job for the ear, why is it that the eye always want to get involved with something only the eye can do? I often wonder, why is it that the sense of taste, the sense of smell has a tendency to interfere with the sense of taste? When they two should be working in sync with the other. one of the things I can tell you about the sense of taste and the sense of smell is that with allergies that I've had for a number of years, I very seldom smell anything. I can walk into a Thanksgiving house that someone has been cooking all day long and not smell anything, Brother Green. And that interferes with what I eat or what I like. Drive the first lady up the wall because I don't like much, because I don't smell much. So when I don't smell much, then don't much taste good. And then there are times when I just leave the church and pass by Church's Chicken. Happen to be on a 30-day fast. And they just dropped in the load for 11 o'clock. And they get hung up in my car and follow me all the way home. And I often wonder, 4 or 5 days ago, I couldn't smell nothing. Then we started a 30-day fast, and now I can smell everything. It's funny how, not funny, but funny how Satan has a tendency to try us and put us in positions where we challenge us to come short of the glory of God. These particular family members of CORE, they wrote this Psalms 46. And they wrote this particular Psalms, and I was, as I was studying this, preparing it for delivery to you, I began to wonder, how is it that here these particular individuals were a group of individuals that challenged the man of God, their family did. And God literally destroyed them. He caused, because of their challenging Moses and Aaron, God caused the ground to open up and swallow them up. All 250 of them were swallowed up by the ground. And then after they were swallowed up, burnt up, and then he covered them up. And you would have thought that all of the children of Israel would have known and seen that God is God. But if you keep on reading the chapter, Numbers 16, y'all do that when you get home, you're on my time. You'll find that the group that watched them be swallowed up, and how God had reacted and responded to them doing what they did to Moses and Aaron. They were displeased with Moses and Aaron for what had happened to the 250. How many of y'all know that God's not marked? So what God did was, God turned right around before the chapter's over and took out 14,700 because of what things that you don't like inside of the tabernacle of God. Wow. And that's one of the reasons why when I read this Psalms, I read the Psalms knowing that these particular individuals, they understand how God operates. They understand how being disobedient to God and what it costs. They understand how important it is to know God. They understand how important it is to stay in place where God has placed you. They understand how to be what God has called them to be. They understand how when people get anxious and want to get ahead of themselves, to say, be still and know that I am God. And so therefore, this particular individual that written this, they've written it from experience about what they had heard through the years, about what had happened to some of their family members in the past. And they didn't want to make that same mistake over again. So many times in our lives, our children make the same mistakes that we made because we covered up rather than tell them the truth about our lives. So many times we give bad advice to daughters and sons because we refuse to tell them that we made some of those same mistakes before. And the consequences of those mistakes cause real issues in our lives. And so they grow up thinking that you're perfect, only to find out that you're not. The sons of Korah wrote this particular Psalms only to let us know that God is our refuge and our strength. They began to let all of us know that God is the one that we can depend on, our very present help in time of trouble. These particular individuals were one that would let us know that God is someone that you can always count on. Doesn't matter what it is that you're going through. Don't get all upset because things are not going your way. Don't get all bent out of shape because it looks like God is not giving you favor. Don't get all upset because it looked like the doctor's always giving you a bad report. Don't get all bent out of shape because it seems like your child is always the one that's in trouble at school. Don't get all messed up because it seems like every time somebody gets laid off, they lay you off. Don't get all upset because you've been passed over by every promotion. It said, be still and know that I'm God. CEV says, watch this. Our God says, calm down. Just calm down. Relax for a moment. And just know that God is God. It actually says, and learn that I am God. All the nations on earth will honor me. In other words, what God is saying is, I'm making something. So many times in our lives, God is making something out of us. And he's using the experiences in our lives to make us complete. If we never had a problem, we would know that God would solve them. If we never had gone through tests, we would never have a testimony. If we never had issues, we wouldn't be on our knees praying. But God is building something out of us. And as he makes something out of us, he sends us through trials and tests. Psalms 27:5 says, for in time of trouble, he'll hide me in his pavilion yard. In the secret place of his tabernacle, he shall hide me. He shall set me up on a rock. In other words, what he was saying to us is that God is the one that's going to hide me in the secret place of his tabernacle, his pavilion yard. God is the one that's going to set me up on a rock. In other words, I've been down for a long time, but God is the one that's going to set me up on a rock. I've been going through it, but God is the one that's going to set me up on a rock. I've been having a hard time, but God is going to set me up on a rock. I've been wrestling with this for a long time, but God is going to set me up on a rock. God will hide me in his pavilion yard. In the secret of his tabernacle shall he hide me. In other words, what he's saying is that the enemy can't harm me until he grow me up. There's some things that I need to go down. I'm going through that he's going to take care of me. He's going to make provisions for me. But I got to make sure that I'm in it within him. The sons of Korah wrote this particular Psalms 46 only to let us know that God is able. We know that God is able because we watched how he worked miracles after miracle after miracle. We know that God is able because we watched how he walked with Moses for 40 years in Egypt. We know that he's worthy because we watched how he worked. He worked 40 years with Moses and Midian on the backside of the mountain. We know that God is able because we watched how God worked with Moses 40 years in the wilderness. We know that God is able because God will never leave you nor forsake you. We know that God is able. We know that God is able. There's a record that shows that God is able. We watched how God worked with Joseph. We know that God is able when Joseph's brothers turned their backs on him and threw him in a well, in a pit. We know that God is able. We watched how he went through trial after trial. We know that God is able because God brought him out and made him victorious. We know that God is able because we watched how God brought us from last year to right now. We know that God is able because we heard how millions of people died from diseases, but here, we're still here. We know that God is able because we watched how horrific storm after horrific storm came through our nation, and yet we're still here. We know that God is able because we watched how individuals that come into malls and shoot up malls, and we're still here. We will know that God is able because we watched how they walked into churches and shot up in churches, and we're still here. We know that God is able because the doctor said that they could do us no more good, but we're still here. I have to ask the question, whose report are you going to believe? I know that God is able. So we need to be still and know that God is God. Be still and know God. Recognize who God is. That I am God. Listen, I was just saying, God is a God that watches, telling the mother watches, who going through it and watches, feel like they're all by themselves. For that mother who's doing it all alone, be still and know God. For that mother who's supplying for her children all by herself, be still and know that God is God. For that father who have tried all he could try, watch this, and still can't get a chance, watch this, be still and know that God is God. For that child who keep on putting out effort and still keep falling behind, know that God is God. And God never fails. No matter how hard they work, no matter how much they try, no matter how much they put out, just be still and know that God is God. To the saint, watch this, who keep on praying and praying and praying and still going through difficulty after difficulty after difficulty, be still and know God. He'll work it out. The songwriter said, Jesus will work it out. I tried and I tried. I just couldn't get my problem solved. But Jesus will work it out. See, the thing that we need to understand is that if we stop still and know that he's God, watch how God works in our lives. To that mother that seems that God has turned their back or deaf ear to them. God is still God. Just hold on. I was looking at the news, and there was a mother that was testifying before the Senate, and she was testifying that that opium drug, the problem that's going on with drugs in America, her two sons tried it. Didn't know that they were trying that drug, but it had been fixed or something had been tampered with in the drug. And the way that she brought it out was that both her sons died the same day. I want you to understand that a mother that's going through it like that, That may not be your story, but you've been praying and things hadn't turned around. Just be still and know that God is God. You've been waiting patiently and things still seem like they're the same. Just know that God is still God and he can turn your life around. It seems like you've been praying but things haven't stopped or haven't changed. God is still God. It seems like God has turned a deaf ear to you and your family. But God has sent me to tell you today, be still and know God. Be still and know who he is. If we get to know who God is, then God will turn our situation around. Therefore, will we not fear? See, God is looking for a people that's not afraid of trusting him. I turn my life over to him because I understand that God is God. And so therefore, as CV tells us that just calm down. Don't get all excited because things look like they are running out of order. Calm down. Just because things look like they're out of control. The Amplified Bible puts it a little bit different. It said, be still and know. Then it says, recognize and understand that God is God. If it had not been for the Lord which was on my side, where would I be? So now that I understand that God is our refuge and our strength, our very present help in times of trouble, I can understand that even the earth itself will be removed. Watch this. And I understand that mountains may be carried into the sea, in the midst of the sea. I understand that if all these things happen, God is still God. No matter what my conditions may be, God is still God. Though the waters roar and trouble through the mountains and they shake and quiver, God is still God. What the psalmist was writing and he understood was that even the mountain of Zion, if the mountain of Zion will not be destroyed because God had designated that as his dwelling place. And so therefore, if that happens, we don't have to worry because God is in the midst of us. And so I tell you, saints, those who are born again, baptized believers in Christ Jesus, having experienced regeneration, don't get all upset because God is not done with you yet. He's got you in the palm of his hands. And what he told us was, if any man be in the palm of his hand, nobody can pluck him out. I'm so glad that I'm covered by the one who loves me. I'm so glad that I'm covered by the one who died for me. I'm so glad that I'm covered by the one who stayed on the cross from the 6th to the 9th hour. I'm so glad I'm covered by the one who they put him in a borrowed tomb. I'm so glad that I'm covered by the one that stayed there for 3 days. I'm so glad that I'm covered by the one that got up early Sunday morning with all power in heaven and earth in his hands. I'm so glad that I'm covered by the one that got up with all power and let me know that the same power that raised Jesus from the dead we have. Be still and know God. Woo! There's a river that streams, flows into the city. The songwriter let us know that the spirit thereof is spread from the tabernacle to the Most High. In other words, when you're hooked up with God, it's not just for you. It's for all of those individuals that you come in contact with to get to know him as well. And so therefore, when you become a conduit for the word of God to flow through you, while other people that you're attached to can get to hear God's word through you. Did you not know that God did not call you just to sit down? God is in the midst of her, the city, of us. Thou shalt not be moved. Wow. The Lord of hosts is with us, verse 7 says. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Y'all do understand that Jacob was one that had to leave his father's house and go into a land because his brother Esau wanted to take his life. He went into a place where he had to go work for a living. He went into a place where he had been there for 7 years and was promised to marry one daughter and wind up having the other. Had to work 7 more years to marry the daughter that he loved. And then had to work 7 more years before he was blessed to be able to leave. But when God blessed him in such a way where he had numbers of sheep, numbers of servants, and he had more than what he had when he went into the land, because God is God. And God let him know that the reason why I'm blessing you is because before he went into the land of Laman, before he went in, he would sleep down with his head on a rock. And it said that he began to see the vision of, looked like angels traveling on a ladder from earth into heaven. And that particular place, he knew that God was there. In that particular place, what he told God was that if you take care of me in this land in which I'm going, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pay a tithe, 10% of everything that you bless me with. And so what God told him was, the reason why I'm blessing you with all of this that I bless you with is because of what you did there at that rock. And because of the blessing that you said there at that rock, I would understand this. Just be still and know. Laman may look like he's taking advantage of you, but be still and know. Look like you've been here longer than you plan to be, but be still and know. Look like things are not working out on your behalf, but be still and know. Look like everything that is working against you, but be still and know that I am God.